Everybody give it up for Traveling Light. Aren't they amazing? Thank you so much. You guys are amazing, just amazing. It is so good to be back. So thank you. Welcome to the Centers for Spiritual Living Castle Rock. And I'm Reverend Julie Lobato, and I have been traveling for the last couple of weeks, and it feels so good to be back. And I feel so welcomed, and I missed you all, and I love you all so much. So I just wanted you to know that first off. And the Sweet Surrender song, I tell you, it took everything I had to just keep it together. You know, these past 2 weeks going to the Centers for Spiritual Living annual leadership conference where there was just a ton of transformative experiences and incredibly inspiring speakers. And, you know, you're just split open over and over and over again, and you experience so much coming in, and then you process it. And then we took a few extra days, Tony and I did, to drive from Orlando to St. Petersburg, where I lived for 16 years, and a great deal of my adult history is. And my two best friends in the whole wide world, Diane and Lynn, and we got to get together with them. And it was the first time since Dylan passed away, who you all know. I've spoken of Dylan before, and I got to see my goddaughters and the children that I actually helped be born in Diane's home. It was just amazing. So this whole trip was like a going home, coming home, and full circle of things. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that in my talk this morning. But the song Sweet Surrender, Diane and Lynn and I had that CD in the mid-90s. And we used to dance and sing to those songs and play them on the drums. And there's just so much good, rich, profound history that goes with that. And so I just wanted to share that with you. We are entering into this theme, Open to Expansion, which is our theme for March. And it is kind of like where we're going to go through the microcosm of the macrocosm. And I'm going to weave you through, and today we're going to go on a little exploration, a little trip, because my intention was to bring back some nuggets, some key nuggets from the conference, from the leadership conference. We had incredible keynote speakers that brought really neat insights and neat ways of looking at it. And of course, right from the get-go, our Sunday evening keynote speaker, Bishop Yvette Flunder, just broke us all open. I instantly fell in love with her. She was an excellent speaker, and she came with an incredible message. And so I'm just going to weave that in this morning as we come together and experience what it is to open to expansion. And exactly what is that? And what is your expansion? And what does that look like? And what does that opening look like? What does it feel like? So Bishop Yvette said, "Never, for the sake of tranquility or acceptance, deny the authenticity of your journey." And that's what the last 2 weeks were for me. I got to show up authentically in many different ways. And I'm going to share a little bit about that with you, but that's the interesting thing about when we go through transformative experiences and we're broken open and our heart's open and we're willing to step out with courage and with vulnerability to truly grasp more of what this feeling is and what it means to emerge, to expand, to bring what it is that we come here and hear all the time or go to classes and hear and that we process in our daily lives. Do you ever feel that way? There's times where it kind of all seems to come together and we break ourselves open and we realize, wow, I didn't even know that was there. Or, wow, I thought I had dealt with that already and put that to bed. And here it is, right here in my face. And I know why. And we'll go into that this morning. I know why. So just bear with me. You know me. I'm wearing my heart right here on my sleeve this morning. And I am just so filled with the love and the desire and the happiness of being home and filled with everything that I've experienced in the last 2 weeks. So never for the sake of tranquility or acceptance, deny the authenticity of your journey, whatever that looks like, because it's authentic. If it looks like tears, let it be tears. If it looks like laughter, let it be laughter. If it looks like breaking open and opening up and meeting your greatest fear right in front of you, and then realizing in that moment, I have the power to dissolve this. It doesn't need to be my fear anymore. I let go. I let go truly. That's what I know that Bishop Yvette was talking about. Don't deny the authenticity of your journey. So David Alt, Dr. David Alt, a precious, beloved minister of the Atlanta church, in one of his talks, he told this precious story of when he was a child, and he was it was either Sunday school or vacation Bible school in the summertime, and he said that he was working on an assignment. They were all supposed to color Jesus, and so they were busy coloring Jesus, and the teacher noticed that David had colored Jesus with blonde hair. And so the teacher came up to him and said, David, tell me, what is this? Why did you color Jesus with blonde hair? And David said, well, I had always heard that blondes have more fun. And this guy looks like he could use some more fun in his life. You gotta just love them. So I love that. I love that. That's what we're talking about. You know, what color would you color Jesus' hair? He wanted it to be blonde because he wanted Jesus to have more fun. So how open are you to the authenticity of your journey? Let me ask you that right now. And it's okay, however you answer that. But I am inviting you to ponder that in this moment. How open are you to the authenticity of your journey? Are you open to expansion right here and right now, this very moment in your life? Are you feeling comfortable with just going along and letting things be the way they are day after day because it feels really safe and secure and don't cause any ripples and don't cause any bumps, because this is what we've learned to do, is to maintain? Or are you open to expanding? I will let you in on something. When we bring ourselves to the awareness of having the intention to open to expansion, where we step into is a feeling and an experience and a journey far greater than we could ever possibly imagine. The amount of intimacy that we get to have with ourselves and our God self and the people in our lives is profound. It's just absolutely amazing. I believe that life shows up in amazing ways that allows us to continually discover our expansiveness. And I know that you know this, whether we even sign up for it or not. Sometimes those greatest fears come and meet us right here. Sometimes those things that we swear we took care of and we dealt with and we processed and we put to bed and we never have to deal with again, come back up. And I know that life does that on purpose. Your genuine God self, that creative divine spark and being that is alive and well and dancing within you, does this on purpose. I believe that the choices we make in responding to life determines whether or not we reach the fullness of our destiny. And I have a desire to reach the fullness of my destiny. I desire that. Georgia O'Keeffe says, I've been absolutely terrified every moment of my life, and I have never let it stop me from doing a single thing that I've wanted to do. I really resonate with that. So do we ever deny ourselves the next vital step in our own evolution? Do you ever catch yourself doing that? Hold on. Be safe. Because that's what you're doing. You would be denying yourself the next vital step in your evolution. Have you guys ever seen the Bob Newhart skit on the woman that was afraid of being buried alive in a box? Anybody out there? I know a few people have. Bob Newhart, I just think, is absolutely brilliant and hilarious. And this is one particular skit that is a beautiful representation of New Thought and what we teach here every single Sunday and in classes. It's the perfect culmination of science of mind. So Bob Newhart in this skit is being a psychiatrist, and this woman comes to see him because she said, I've heard you are the best. You are the absolute best in the business, so that's why I'm here. You know, word of mouth says, your treatment can help me. And he's like, great, what seems to be the problem? And she says, well, I've had this terrible fear all my life of being buried alive in a box. And she said, it keeps me from from keeping jobs. It keeps me from going out of the house. It keeps me from sleeping. I'm just caught up in so much stress because I am afraid of being buried alive in a box. And Bob Newhart, he nods his head and he's like, yes, yes, I can see where that would be quite distressing. Yes, yes, she says, it's quite distressing. He says, well, I've just got 3 words for you. This is your treatment. And she gets her pencil and pad out of her purse and she goes to write it down and she's waiting with poised anticipation. And Bob Newhart says, okay, are you ready? I got 3 words for you. She's like, yeah, I'm ready. And he says, just stop it. And she looks at him and he goes, just stop it. She's like, I beg your pardon? I don't quite understand what you mean. Just stop it. Stop thinking about being buried alive in a box. Just stop it. Stop obsessing about it. Stop thinking about it. And eventually it'll quit running your life. And I just think that's absolutely hilarious. Now, of course, that was a comedy skit. And I certainly am not posing fun at all for people who have things that they are looking to work on and process and get over. The reason why I brought that in right now is because that's where we can get caught up sometimes, where our ego can tend to drive the train, drive the bus, where we'll purposefully put things in our life, thoughts, beliefs, meanings, that is denying ourselves our next vital step in our own evolution. And I get it, it's a normal thing to do. It's scary sometimes to evolve. It's scary to step outside of your comfort zone. Generally though, folks, not much evolution has ever come within the comfort zone. And I know that we know that. So Mary Mann Morrissey in our prosperity class, which is just going splendidly and wonderfully. Ross is doing a great job. And Mary Mann Morrissey talks about your higher calling. What is your dream? What is it that you hold in mind that you would say, I am so happy and grateful now that I am, and you fill in the blank. And so with this dream, she talks about, and I have talked in the past about different levels of awareness. Are we looking at this from a 10-foot level of awareness, or are we looking at it from a 30,000-foot level of awareness? There's a difference. And Mary Mann Morrissey talks about it in terms of frequencies. And she says, right now in your life, you could be experiencing in conscious awareness and going off of a frequency like 85.7. And this dream that you have, or this image you have, or this set that you have in mind of who you are and who you desire to be, once you accomplish that dream of, I am so happy and grateful now that I am, fill in the blank, who are you in that dream? How are you showing up? How are you being? What words are you using? How are you describing your life? How are you interacting with people when you are in that scenario? And she says, let's say, for example, that's 105.6. So when we're in this conscious awareness that is on this particular station of, whatever it was I said, 95.7, and our dream, what we desire to attain is on 105.6, we need to turn the dial. We need to step into and become and act as if we are already that person that is operating at level 105.6. That's where I'm bringing in the Bob Newhart. Because sometimes we have to look at this stuff that we're doing and we don't even know we're doing it. And just say, just stop it. Just let it go. Some of the greatest gurus sitting at the top of the mountain just chanting Om all day long, I guarantee you, something will come up for them where they could have swore they let go of it, they took care of it, they healed it, whatever. It's going to come up for them. And like I had said before, I believe that how we respond to that determines whether or not we reach the fullness of our destiny. So this is what we're here to do, is to practice and incorporate and embrace and enhance our ability in our responding. How do we want to respond? And that is the expansion of our soul, the expansion of our consciousness. So we get opportunities to decide how we're going to show up. Does this support who I am and who I want to be? And it's a lot of times, folks, really powerfully subconscious and unconscious. I have to say, I had some really transformative experiences in the last couple of weeks. And at the conference, you know, you enter into it, and Bishop Yvette Flunder gave this incredible keynote talk on Sunday night, and it just opened up for all these activities to occur for the rest of the week, to allow for everything that Yvette gave us an invitation and a welcome to do. And I tell you, something came up for me that I could have sworn I had taken care of, could have sworn I had put to bed and released and healed. But you know what? Unconsciously and subconsciously, I had not. And I was able to attract that experience into my life again so that the me now could show up and decide how I wanted to respond to that versus the me back then or wherever. You know, this trip was a complete circle for me. Bob Luckins says this: see if you can come to an understanding with yourself that who you are is not something to be afraid of. Being who you are is a process. It's not an event. It's not a resume. It's not an opinion. It's not an SAT score. Who you are will always be largely invisible to you. Who you will best be seen, who you are will best be seen by you when you see the footprints of the life that you have lived. I am seeing the footprints of the life that I have lived. I got to circle back. I got to go back. And Dr. Yvette Flunder talks about this. She talks about how her grandmother used to have a saying, Lord, I thank you for my life, and I wouldn't take nothing for my journey. And I really got that in these last 2 weeks. You know, I'm sure each and every one of us could tell some incredibly wonderful, beautiful tapestry of stories of our journeys through life. I have my own incredible, wonderful tapestries of stories. And I am just like Bishop Yvette Flunder's grandmother. I wouldn't take nothing for my journey because it is the journey that has allowed for the expansion to take place for me to be who I am right now. And it's been your journey that has taken you to the place where you are right now. And I wouldn't take nothing for it. Yet I know in this moment, there is a really powerful thing taking place. In this moment, I have the power and the opportunity and the privilege to be able to choose and decide how I am going to respond to the rest of my life, just like you do. Bishop Yvette says our journey forward is a journey backward. Now, take it, she said this Sunday night in her keynote address. She says it's a journey to undo the colonization of my mind and my spirit. I got to do that. I got to take a journey that has pushed me way leagues forward in this moment than I could have ever imagined by going backward. She says, I have to go backward before I can go forward because we lost some things along the way, and we've got to go back and claim them and bring them back into our lives. Well, folks, I'm here to tell you, that which sometimes we lose along the way is the ability to respond to things, to circumstances, people, events, things that we feel happen to us. We get to respond to them now as the consciousness and the person we're showing up now in our life. That's what we get to go back and pick up. We get to go back and rewrite the past, rewrite history based on what we know to be true in our lives right now. I believe that's what Bishop Yvette was talking about. She says the temptation as I evolve spiritually, now get this, the temptation as we evolve spiritually is to vilify and to deny the authenticity of my lived experience. Oh no, that didn't really happen to me. Oh no, I didn't really respond that way back then. Oh no, I never got hit for this, or I never went through that experience. Oh no, I am just so whole and spiritual and complete right now. That couldn't possibly have happened in my past. Bishop Yvette says, no. Let's hold up for a second here. There's a temptation to do that, yet she says once you have reached that moment in your life where you realize that the only thing holding you back right now from experiencing all of the sumptuous bliss that you could ever possibly imagine is yourself. And what could possibly be in us that would call us to do that? So sometimes we've got to decolonize our mind and our spirit. Sometimes we've got to take a journey backward to pick up the things along the way that we may have missed or we may have dropped. And don't fall into that temptation. She says, I've had a spiritual journey, and I believe that our manifestations line up with our expectations. She says, I've got to claim my stuff. I think we've all got to claim our stuff. Because just like Dr. Bob Luckins says, there's nothing wrong with the stuff. The stuff is all of you. You're beautiful. You are not a mistake. There is nothing in your past that can make you less divine than the present. Simply nothing. So the great teacher, Dr. Howard Thurman, also sums this up beautifully and perfectly. He says, and he reminds us that during a challenging period, we have the opportunity to learn how to walk in remembered radiance. We all have moments when we have felt wholly connected to life. These moments become eclipsed when we enter into trying times. Is everybody following me here? Do you know what I'm talking about? Can I get a hand up or an amen? Or are you guys alive out there? Just checking in, touching base. So I'm knowing, because I'm following this. I mean, we all have those moments when we felt fully and wholly connected to life. And then there's these moments that are eclipsed when we enter into trying times. But when we bring these moments of remembered radiance into our awareness, so see, we're going through this trying time. If we could bring in those moments of being wholly connected, of being in the flow, then we know that all has not permanently been lost, you see. It's never permanent. Yes, our perception of ourselves change, as it must, when the activity of spirit flows through us. As we give of ourselves, we see the good within us. As we give of ourselves, we see the good within us. This right seeing allows us to realize, honor, and appreciate our unique pattern, timing, and unfoldment. Wherever you are right now is perfect. If you are high on top of the mountain singing and dancing and in bliss and radiating joy, it is perfect. And if you are walking the valley, picking up bits and parts and pieces that you need to climb that next mountain, it is perfect right where you are. In the process, we cease comparing ourselves to others. We leave behind any sense of inferiority or superiority. Our relationship with the infinite becomes intimate and personal to us. We trust where Spirit is leading us. We bless the challenging times as they illuminate our path. This illumination gets us through the night. Walk into it with your head held high. This is Dr. Howard Thurman saying this. The illumination gets us through the night. Walk into it with your head held high, full of confidence and trust. Walk into it with full confidence and trust. Walk into it confidently, trusting. It is only you are walking into. And there's a reason why I'm sharing that with you right now. I'm going to get to it a little later as we close. Because it's the you, it's the God you, the Spirit you that knows the true wisdom and truth of your being, of your beautiful being. It's the you are walking into. So our banquet keynote speaker Thursday night was Jean Houston. Does everybody know who Jean Houston is? Just absolutely phenomenally love this woman. She is mesmerizing. She kept us mesmerized for well over an hour and 20 minutes. She talked Thursday night. She was amazing. And she wrote the foreword to the Science of Mind textbook that I first used when I was first going through classes. It is completely torn up and broken up now. It's in pieces. But I always had kind of a bit of a feeling of connection with her because she had written the foreword to the particular edition of text that I used when I was going through classes. And it was just really amazing. I had never gotten to hear her speak. I've heard a lot of different people speak, but I've never heard her speak, and it was truly remarkable. And I'm going to share a little bit about what she talked about. Yet I want to start out by saying that as a part of this going full circle and coming home and picking up the pieces of yourself, you know, there was absolutely nothing in the past 2 weeks left to chance. Everything I experienced, everyone that I experienced, every experience that I experienced was on purpose. And it's just amazing. I'll never forget the first time I entered a Science of Mind center. My first teacher and the minister of that center, she passed away last year. And during the banquet, they always do a slideshow presentation of all of the ministers that had passed away in memoriam. And it's never easy to watch. I don't know why they show it right before dinner, because we all usually start crying, and then we have to eat dinner, and it's just a big snotty mess, and it's hilarious. So there were some great ministers, very close and near to my heart, that passed away this past year. So it was an interesting, you know, like I said, everything I experienced was on purpose. Now, her name was Reverend Pinkston. And whenever I walked into the first center, it wasn't Center for Spiritual Living back then, it was Church of Religious Science. But back in the day, she was the minister. And the very first Sunday, my acupuncturist took me and said, I've got this center I really want you to try out. And I will never, ever forget this. And I'm bringing it full circle for you this morning on purpose, because she would read, or at least this Sunday, she read the very first little poem here in the Science of Mind textbook. And I don't know if you guys have ever seen it, because it's in the front. It's before any of the text. It's before anything. And I always thought, boy, that's kind of interesting. And she also looked just like my Aunt Lassie, so I felt like, oh, okay, I can listen to this woman because I love my Aunt Lassie. So I thought that was really cool, too. So here she is, this woman. She's standing up there, and the first thing that she does is read this, and I'm going to share it with you. Peace be unto thee, stranger. Peace be unto thee, stranger, and be not afraid. I have left the gate open, and thou art welcome to my home. There is room in my home for all. The room is warm and cheerful, and you will find comfort and rest within. The table is laid, and the fruits of life are spread before thee. The wine is here also, it sparkles in the light. I have set a chair for you where the sunbeams dance through the shade. Sit and rest and refresh your soul. Eat of the fruit and drink of the wine. All is yours, and you are welcome. So this is what she read, and it really grabbed my heart, because my best friend Diane, her husband is a musician. He's not anymore. He's a professor in college, but back in the day he was a musician, and he played for the rock band The Tempest. And he wrote a song that had almost those exact same words in it, and it was called The Resting Place. It's really a beautiful song, and one day I'll play it here for you. So you can imagine, I walk in, first time going to this center, the woman looks like Aunt Lassie. She reads this, very first thing she ever says, and it's the same lyrics to this song that my beloved best friend Diane John had written. I was just like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Well, she passed away last year. So I just send her on her way and say blessings to you. She was a wonderful first teacher in this teaching. Lots of things coming up here for us to share. And I wanted to share that because Gene Houston, keynote speaker Thursday night, wrote the foreword to that text. And it made a connection for me, and I wanted to share that with you. Like I said, she had us mesmerized for over an hour and 20 minutes. She started out by telling the story of when she met Dr. Ernest Holmes. She was 9 years old. She said he was very sweet, very short. She's very tall. So at 9 years old, she said that we were the same height. And that he had a very strong voice. And he was speaking about the mind of the master, and this was in 1946. And so she went up to him afterwards, doop, doop, and said, you know, in her little 9-year-old self, she said, how do I contact the mastermind? And Ernest said, look inside and you will find it, and then come back and tell me all about it. And so she did. She also got to meet Albert Einstein, which I thought was really neat. She had a lot to share, and I'd like to pass some of her nuggets on to you this morning. She says, and this is all about opening to expansion. She says it's all about the game. We are players in a great game that is a paradox. We are both infinite and finite beings. We are God's stuff, incarnate in space and time. You are a fractal of the infinite self. What infinity does for fun, she says, the human selfing game may be what the infinite does for fun. She's basically saying she thinks the infinite does us for fun, creates us and has us experience what we experience. She says, we live in a state of galloping ambiguity. I thought that was really interesting. What do we do? Where do we go to live in a state of both local and non-local? And she said this, and I thought this was hilarious. Other times in history thought that they were it. She said, but they were wrong. We're it right now. And that's really what her talk was all about. We're it. We can extend through conscious work on ourselves is what she was talking about. This is what I'm talking about, open to expansion. We can extend. We can realize that dream. I am so happy and grateful now that we can experience that and manifest that in our life when we can see ourselves, picture ourselves. Who are we? How are we showing up in that time? And then be that or be more like that. Just stop it. Just stop thinking any thoughts that keep us from being the person that's in that dream, that's at that frequency of 105.7. So Dr. Jean Houston goes on to speak about Joseph Campbell and his hero's journey. She worked with him for many, many years. I think she said 40 years she worked with him side by side. And so in her talk, she brought us through. She says, you know, the hero's journey, she just really quickly walked us through that. The call, she says, you know, the hound of heaven wakes you up barking every single morning until you finally listen to the call. And she says, how many of you have heard the call? How many of you guys out there have heard that call, have heard Spirit nudging you and calling you and saying, come on, we've got this journey to go on, come with me. And then she says, then there's the refusal of the call. No, no, not me. Go pick somebody else. I'm not ready. You know, that thing that we do. And then she says you can't stand yourself anymore because Spirit keeps poking you and Spirit keeps nudging you, and the hound of heaven keeps waking you up barking every morning. So finally you quit refusing the call, can't stand yourself anymore, so you accept. She says, and then what happens? Well, once you accept, all these allies start showing up. Allies that show up in different ways and different forms. She says the book will fall open in the perfect place, and whatever it is that you hear on the radio is exactly what you needed, or these friends come into your life that pick you up and support you and illuminate your way. So that goes on, and then she says you run into the guardian of the gate. And she says the guardian is the guardian of the same olds. And she says you have to fool its expectations, because if you don't, you become a dinosaur just like all the others hanging around talking other people not to go through the gate, not to go through the gate of the same olds, right? So then you fall into the belly of the whale, that you have time to recreate yourself. This is the time to recreate yourself when you fall into the belly of the whale. You know what I'm talking about? When you're in that moment, that time where you're like, oh my God, this is it. I better put up or shut up. I gotta move it. I gotta move my feet. I gotta do something here. You know, there's that time when we fall into the belly of the whale. And then she says, and at that time, when you fall into the belly of the whale and you recreate yourself, she says it's like being a fetus for the second time. And then you take on the world. You take on the world. And the God forces enter, and everything falls right into place, and you're soaring and you're flying, and everything's going for you, and you meet the beloved of the soul, your spiritual beloved. You are given a great boon, a numinous boon. extraordinary revelations come your way and about your own capacities. And then she says, and indeed, you go home and you start the whole darn journey all over again. Isn't that the truth? All over again, over and over again. She says you are exploring deep spiritual patterns and new ways of being. That's what we're doing. That's what we're doing in this life. You are on the great journey. The world needs new thought, and new thought needs to arise to the occasion of its own through the further development of its own innate potential in order to meet the challenge of this brand new reality. She also spoke a little bit about the Centers for Spiritual Living. It was really wonderful and humbling. She gave her own opinion about it. She says the Centers for Spiritual Living, quite frankly, comprise the most genuinely welcoming atmosphere of any religious organization I know of, honoring all religions authentically and particularly hospitable, especially to the most wounded and disenfranchised of us. The centers provide a structure for people to rebuild their lives at all levels. Affirmations, clear belief systems for the brain, kindness, vibrantly powerful prayer for the emotional level, service-oriented training. And she said the ministers I know are translucently clear, realistic, humorous, the embodiment of kindness, and by and large, they practice what they preach. You know, that felt pretty good to hear her say that. Up on the stage, we had about 500 people at the conference this year. She talks about how we're all about being in a renaissance. This is a time, she says, where new thought, you know, back in all those other ages when they thought they were it, they weren't. She says, we're it. Because she says this is the time new thought needs to really step it up. We really need to step it up. We're moving more into the world. We need to build a more worldly conscious awareness of what it is that we teach. And that is we teach you how to think. We don't teach you what to think, we teach you how to think. So she talks about this renaissance. She says we're going through a rebirth out of an outmoding, dying, or impossible situation. The human spirit grows and becomes equal to the challenge. That we go through those valleys and pick up that stuff on purpose so that we can be strengthened, so that we can grow the spiritual muscles that we need to grow to enlighten ourselves enough so that we're enlightening the world. Our perspective is to open up. She says, ultimately, it's all about summoning the sacred, being present with the sacred for our own evolution and to be sacred servants in this time in history. And so as viewed, she takes us through these steps. She said, the mystic journey begins with awakening. Wow. And then you say, uh-oh, I have a lot of miserable habits that I need to release. So you wake up, and in waking up, you see all the package. You see everything that you need to stop, just like Bob Newhart said. You wake up to what it is that you need to stop thinking or repeating or those patterns or those old habits. And then once you're working on that, then illumination happens. And then you start seeing patterns, how everything connects. Do you know what I'm talking about? When you're working on yourself and you become aware and you're consciously moving through your life and you're letting go of that which no longer serves you, you start feeling connected. And you start seeing those connections take place everywhere. She says, then enormous creativity comes into you. You're just overflowing and bursting with enormous creativity. You see as a little child, your mind taps into the mind of all being. And then it's followed by rapture, ecstasy, huge celebration, which is then followed by the dark night of the soul. She says your psyche's exhausted from the rapture, from the ecstasy. Do you all connect with what I'm talking about here? Yeah? And then she says the dark night of the soul, when you move through that, then you are at union. You become one with the one. It's kind of like that other process that we just went over about Dr. Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. So she says you are coming alive, folks. We are going mythic, and you are mythic links, whether you like it or not. These are the times, and we are the people. And so I want to close today with an experience that she